gonna jump right into the topic today, which is practical steps for a strong year end and a fresh start. But housekeeping items, I feel like a lot of you probably joined this, so you already know I'm not gonna go too much in detail, but it is being recorded. We'll put it up on YouTube, as you know. Let's be mindful. Raise your hand and use the chat box. And then this is an open, trusted forum. So bring in your ideas, bring in all that. And then we want to have a conversation, and not necessarily just one person talking and whatnot. So bring in your ideas, and this is also to build network, which is why we share LinkedIn and whatnot. And let's focus on continuous learning. So really hoping that Cinthia and I are really hoping that as usual on every Tuesday that you guys do, we get out of this session with at least one or two action items and tips that you can start to implement that can actually help you. So that's the goal. And without further ado, we are going to start getting into this. So Cynthia and I were kind of thinking about this, really like breaking this down into how do we want to kind of talk about year end and beginning of the year, prepping for that. So we really thought about it, and why we actually wanted to do this topic right now specifically is, we want to talk about leaders' perspective. We also want to talk about CSM perspective, or like individual contributor perspective. So from a new leader's perspective, end of the year initiatives, I mean, we broke it down into this 4 categories, but this could be more than 4 right here. And really the goal is that start now. I mean, whether it's your CSM or a leader, that's kind of, that's the goal is year end, initiatives, you got to start now. It may look like, oh my God, Q4 is just around the corner. I'm maybe behind or whatever, but you're not. You still have time. This is the time. This is actually the month to work on your year-end initiatives, and even start working on your New Year initiatives, which we're going to talk about here a little bit. But what are some of the best practices for reviewing the year? I'm gonna kind of go over this a little bit, but then I'll definitely open it up for Cinthia and others to kind of chime in. But one of the things, you start to think about it, like identify challenges. What sort of expectation does your customers have? What sort of expectations your leaders have? Where do you see, where do you fit? Like what went right, what went wrong, and then you kind of focus on those different challenges that are coming across. This is the time to do that little bit of an audit. What are as a leader? Also, what are the expectations of your team when you're meeting? How is your team kind of taking on different things, and what worked for them, what didn't work for them? And then going into the Q4, the major piece is going to be collecting data points, which again, you probably are doing this every quarter, but this is the time that you're not going to be only just thinking about this as a quarter, but as a year end as well. So going into the new quarter, look at the data and think about it from a perspective of how are you, mapping against those compared to last year versus this year, last quarter to this quarter, and all those good stuff that you can, start to kind of think about from a data perspective. And then the other big piece is forecasting. And again, same thing, that, collection of data points with the forecasting is you're not just going to be thinking about it from a year-end perspective, sorry, a quarter end or like a quarter perspective. It's also going to be from a year-end perspective. And do you need to develop a new strategy that you could be taking on into the new year? So I think that's I think the key that I'm trying to highlight here, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, Cinthia, too. But is when you get into this year-end initiative, and when you're trying to focus on those, you still have to keep in mind that it's not just a year end, it's going to be beginning of a new year too. So let's kind of put a plan together that aligns with those initiatives that you're ending, and then you're going to be kind of prepping in the new year.
Yeah, I love everything you said. I think you were spot on. And at the end of the day, the way I see this is now is the time to take a hard look at where you stand on your goals for 2024, right? It really is a time to just to do that audit for a couple of reasons. First of all, to see, because if you're exactly where you need to be and you're poised to finish and achieve all the goals and metrics that you were meant to do, perfect. Do that, ensure that everyone's aligned on the team, and make that happen. And then you've got, in my opinion, a head start in the new year in terms of what worked, what were the best practices, so you can continue to do that and then enhance that there. On the flip side, if you're not where you need to be, if there are certain goals and initiatives that have floundered and that you feel like you're not going to reach, this is the time to really examine that and share that with your leadership leadership and say, realistically, this is not going to happen. Because if you take that proactive approach, you're going to be in a much, much better position than trying to hide from it or trying to like scramble at the end. And I think, Ashna, you put it perfectly. Like this month in particular is a perfect time. We're going into Q4. What needs to happen? 3 months is a long time, and so you could really use that to leverage, some changes, or to just keep doing what, if you're doing things right, counts on that as well. But love to hear if anybody has any questions. Obviously, we'd be happy, or would like to chime in on that. We'd be happy to hear from you as well.
Kathy put in something interesting in the chat that I want to kind of highlight. And I don't know, Cynthia, if you want to take it, but she's asking how might we prepare for a major election in the US right now in the middle of Q4?
Oh, I think that's a really great question. I think that's a huge distraction and I would ignore it. I really would. I mean, as much as you possibly can. You know what I mean? Because it's all in our face. It's all every day. It is affecting business to some extent. A lot of customers are, and this is just my opinion, of course, a lot of customers are taking certain action based on how they think, the election is going to go one way or the other. But I think, from a business perspective, obviously you want to, you meet your customers where they are and help kind of move them along. But really, from a your business standpoint, you need to just keep pushing forward. That's a distraction. And I remember this from 2008, when remember the global financial credit crisis. I was sitting on a trading desk, and the world just felt like it was blowing up. And I remember my boss said, "Don't pay attention to any of that. Just do your job." And I was just like, "Dude, how?" He goes, "Just by coming in, don't listen to that noise." And he was right, because it's unnecessary stress. But Ashna, what are your thoughts?
No, I love what you mentioned because even when I read this question and what you taught, when you were talking, when you were kind of mentioning all this, one thing kept coming in my mind, which is kind of something I actually have a little sticky on my computer written with it. It's like focus on what you can control. And that right there is nothing. None of that is something that is in your control, or how is that going to affect the business, the economy, organization, like whatever that may be. You don't have control over it. So, stressing about it or thinking about it. And again, I know it's hard for me to, I mean, it's easy for me to say than to do it.
Very
But really,
hard.
like when you kind of get into those zones of like, oh my God, this is a distraction, remember and put a sticky on your computer if you need to, like I have. It's like, just literally focus on what you can control. And it is not what you can control. So,
Yeah.
what's the point of even thinking about it? But and then divert your mind into, okay, well, I cannot change that, but I can kind of help. Maybe as a leader, I can help my team, just making sure that they have what they need to do the better year end. Now, I know that that's not something you can control, but you may have some, people in your team, or maybe, leadership or whatever that may be that you're working with, that are maybe emotionally, mentally, whatever, affected by it. So you, as a proactively, you can kind of reach out, or just, I don't know, I think sometimes it's just about, having the conversation with those people. And you don't necessarily need to go into a political zone and just talk all about that. But it's kind of like, okay, well, let's kind of, how can I help you? Like, let's get back on track with what we need to do
Yeah.
in business and what we need to work on. So I think some of those things can help. And I think that can help whether you're a leader or a CSM.
Yeah. Lead by example. I think, and that calmness, I think, and stability, I think could be a big game changer. But
Yeah.
moving on from the CSM perspective, end of year, initiatives. We have similar things, start now, review your book of business, identify challenges and where there might be gaps. Look to enhance your engagement strategy, or if you're doing it right, keep doing what you're doing. And then, ultimately get in the planning zone. But what does that mean? Start now obviously is okay. Look at your customer base as a whole. So when you're reviewing your book of business, what does the customer health index look like for your customer base? Are they, are there at-risk customers? Is everybody turning to green or amber or red? Which way are they going? So you can, obviously segment how your approach is going to be in terms of how you engage with them. Also, too, you obviously want to take stock. Have you hit your performance metrics? And if not, maybe this is now time to kind of like create that action plan, and definitely work with your leader to say, hey, I'm not where I need to be, or hey, I'm crushing it. You know what I mean? What else can I do? Right. If you want to really, really stand out at the end of the year when those performance reviews are happening, etc. Also too, if you're tied to revenue, how do your, renewals, upsells, and cross sells look? Or if you are responsible for CSQLs, these are some of the things that the metrics that you really want to be taking stock on, and understand where they are. Because if you're not proactive, a position you never want to be in is that your leader comes to you and says, where do you stand? And you don't know. You want to have at least an idea. And how good does it look when, if someone approaches you, one of your leaders or your manager, whoever, says, what's happening with this account, and you're on it, right? They have much more confidence, which gives you a lot more freedom. And in terms of identifying challenges and potential gaps, that you might uncover as you review the book of business, think about, like, okay, like obviously you want to figure out like how to fix the immediate problem, but even longer term, like look at how the implementation went. If they're a new customer, did they fail to launch? Did they adopt? Is there stuff that we can do right now? Did they have new team members? Is one of the reasons they're struggling because, they had a big change in people on the team, and maybe you can use some of the digital tools you have, one-to-many tools, or maybe even some one-on-one trainings to get people up to speed, and to really turn that account around and create some more champions that way. And then ultimately, who do you really think is the churn risk? Because that I feel like people, and I did this too, like when I was on the sales side, where you'd have this pipeline, and there was deals that were dead as doornails, and you didn't want to admit it. You're like, no, 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 I think I can break. You just say, if you really think someone's at risk to churn, make it known, because you want to do that early. And it should never really be a surprise to you. You should kind of know, and you should raise it to your manager, because maybe they'll have some creative ideas, or at the minimum, they now know, so they can manage their leaders' expectations. Everything, that communication, channel is super, super critical in being effective, and also protecting yourself when things might go the wrong way. And then in terms of enhanced engagement strategy, right? Like, how do I'm assuming, that in the best case scenario, you've all done success plans and have, touched base all year long on the value milestones with customers, try to get that first time to value if they were new customers as soon as possible. Now's the time to kind of look what the status of those success plans are too, and iterate as you can, to, before year end, to make sure that you can tick all the boxes, and that you have a satisfied customer who's really getting that ROI on your solution. And at the end of the day, it's just about being diligent and proactive. A lot of times, I think people sometimes say, like, how do you become strategic, or how do you really become a relationship manager? Honestly, it's to me, it's just so simple. It's just by showing up, never promising more than you can deliver, acting on, feedback or questions. And when I say acting on, just because a customer asked for something doesn't mean that they can get it, but you can go away, check for them, and then come back and say, that's not possible for XYZ, but this is what we can do. Or let's talk about what you might really need. Managing expectations is super, super key. And when you keep it real with your customers, the good ones are going to appreciate that, and they're going to reward you with their continued business. And at the minimum, be really, really honest with you about where they stand, so you're never surprised about a churn. What do you think, Ashna?
I mean, you pretty much covered it all, but I think I kind of summarize it into basically what you kind of mentioned at the end. It's like that proactive communication that is going to be the key. Is, I think the whole thing about planning the year-end initiatives or your new year initiatives and all those good things, because it's just getting into the zone of like, okay, you want to be strategic, you want to think two steps ahead. So then you start getting into that reflection zone. You start looking into, where are you? Where do you need to go? What resources do you have? What help that you have available? Who can you reach out? Who can you communicate? And I think you kind of get into that zone. So whether it's your QBRs, working with customers, getting your sketch plans done, or working with your leader, or even moving up in your career, like, hey, your initiatives that I really want to, work on this amazing project. So then going into the next year, I can kind of think about, moving up or moving in the direction of career growth, whatever that may be. It starts with you, taking the first step. And, a lot of the time that first step is that proactiveness that you need to have. So that's what I
Agreed.
would add. Yeah. Let me see. Okay. All right. Awesome. So that kind of leads us into the next one, because I want to be mindful of the time too. Okay. All right. Yeah. Oh, I'm moving something here. Okay. So prepping for the new year. I know we've been talking a little bit about this a little bit, for the end of the year already. But some of the things that as a leader you could prep for the new year is, again, capacity planning. Is there enough, is there a need to adjust the size of the team? Or, has your customer base grown or diversified? And I think that's something that as a leader, you should definitely be starting to think about, especially right now as you move into Q4 and as you plan for the next year, what is that going to look like? And I think this, the whole thing about the size of the team is, and I can tell you from a personal perspective and personal experience too, it's like a lot of the time doing that tidbit of, proactive capacity planning also helps to put your team at ease. That you can also kind of, you can do some of these things with your team too. Have a discussion with your team to see what they're feeling, and also, like, kind of get their perspective too, because a lot of the time they might be feeling like, oh my god, we're overwhelmed, or just the state of the economy and everything that we are in right now. I mean, there might be a lot of things that you can actually, kind of get rid of and put them at ease. So then if they're at ease, if they're at that whole psychological safety and all that good stuff, like if they're at that pace, they can really do the work. And again, you can prove your point with the planning, capacity planning and whatnot. Now, I know that's not the base of capacity planning, but it is, as a leader, you need to also think about that from a team's perspective too. So I just wanted to kind of throw it out there. The other thing is forecasting, again, forecasting, you want to kind of forecast for the new year, analyze retention, churn. I know we mentioned retention, churn, but this is the time that you want to kind of go into and thinking about what worked, what didn't, compare from, previous years. And you're looking at not just retention, churn, but I think retention and churn is going to be the key so that you can, better forecast for next year. And then identify potential challenges, and if there needs to be some, room for iterations that you may need to do, because remember, you're starting early, so you still have 3 months left in the year that can move the needle into the right direction, if you plan right now to start working on it right now. And then lastly is like team development and growth. I mean, this is my favorite. Even when I was leading a team, this is September would be the time when I start to, either you can conduct team performance reviews. Like, you need to start thinking about, performance reviews. Now, every company has different things. My company have annual reviews, but then I would still have quarterly reviews with my team, because I felt that there was necessary to talk about their goals and making sure that they're aligning with their goals. So this is the time where you can kind of think about, what those reviews are going to look like. If you need to announce promotions or changes, whatever that may be, what does that look like? And then this is, again, comes down to leading up and leading down. Leading down, you can kind of look at how you want to grow the team, but leading up is if there's going to be, there's need to be, kind of like, changing, adjusting to the size of the team or whatever that may be. This is the time to start to have those conversations if you haven't had those yet. And then lastly, schedule, if you plan to schedule some team training and additional team projects. Again, this is my favorite too, because as I think about team development, it's not just about, growing their career, like giving them promotion or whatever. It's also about, what other projects and things that they can work on, which then puts them into the direction of growth. So again, start to have those conversations with the team right now so that what that's going to look like next year, and you can start to prepare. But these are just some of the ideas. I'm sure there's more, but Cynthia, I'd love to kind of get your take on this.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think you hit on all the key points. And one of the ththings I would definitely focus on, all these things to me are lead to data. I think, in order to make, and that's why I think like year-end planning and new year planning go hand in hand, because, you should be tracking everything. I remember like one of a sales leader a long time ago said, you can't measure what you don't track, right? And so like as a leader in particular, I think even as an individual contributor, you should be tracking all the time. You should know what your numbers are so that you can defend them, and also to know how to get better. But as a leader, for sure, you should be tracking everything. You should be iterating for strong finish to the year. But that same data and those trends that you notice are going to help you create that strategic roadmap. That's really how you're going to do it. Here are the things that worked. I'm going to do 10% more in this direction. I'm going to put more effort here. I'm going to, put more stress or importance on certain metrics or whatever they might be, because I think they're going to be attainable. And I think that's one of the things, like when you do track, you do measure, and you do use data, it's so much easier to defend your position. And that's all leadership wants. They, like we all have like, the gut check of what we think is right and wrong. But I think when you have that gut check with data behind that and identifying the trends, even if you're wrong, at least you had that's part of being strategic as well. Like, hey, listen, I had a mindset on it and I was ready. I'm going to look each quarter to make sure if this isn't working, how can I iterate? But I think that's the beginning and ending point in those instances. And then if we go for the CSM standpoint, right, prepping for the new year, the same thing. You should be. If you notice, the titles we kept the same, creating a strategic roadmap, for leaders and for systems. You should be thinking that, but from your own perspective. And again, some of the highlights are the book of business. When you identify the challenges, what do you do with them? And then how do you kind of maintain that enhanced engagement strategy? And book of business, right? When we're looking at the new year, what's in the revenue pipeline? And that's like also too, like why it's so important to collaborate across teams, because if you have a good relationship with marketing and sales and product, but especially sales in this instance, you're going to see what's in their pipeline that can kind of possibly come to me, so that I know, like how I'm going to be able to manage my book, and also talk with my leader to say, hey, this is what I think is going to be happening. This is how I think I'm going to adjust. You can get that alignment to make sure that everybody's on the same page, and that you're going to be having the right plan if and when those deals close and those customers come to you. And again, this leads right into the strategy for hitting your KPIs and goals. And like I was saying about the leaders, the same thing. You should be looking at your numbers for this year. What did I hit? What did I miss? What was I crushing it at? How can I do better? And also too, like what, again, communication with your manager, like what are they expecting, so that I can ensure that I can hit those goals. And again, data is going to help you do that, and maybe fight back or negotiate what realistically can be done. In terms of identifying challenges, right? When you identify those at-risk customers, you need to create a plan, because again, some of these customers, if you're smart, you're obviously not like just doing 30, 60, or 90 days ahead of a renewal, hey, are you going to sign? You're kind of measuring that customer health index throughout the year. And some of these renewals kind of fall over the new year. So they might happen in January, February, March. So what's it going to be like? And again, if you're thinking of it now, what's the plan going to be? How are we going to kind of try to turn those customers around, either through training, adoption, some other sort of communication? Is it realistic to deliver certain features they want? Most of the time it's not, but have those conversations internally with product and the team, so that you can ensure that you know how to address that and have a plan in place. And then also too, how to upskill yourself in certain instances. Technology is moving so fast. We're in tech, but technology is moving so fast. And so what you really want to do is to just get a handle on it. Maybe if you work on a complex solution, which I have in the past, sometimes the product's a challenge. You don't fully even understand like the solution and all the nuances and how it relates to different industries. And those are some of the things that maybe like is a challenge for you, and things maybe you want to plan for and upskill yourself, as well as other skill sets. And Ashna put in hint, AI. We all know it's here. It's a beast. Learn to master it. Learn, talk to your peers and others, and find out best practices of tools that they're using, and learn how to use them and implement them without killing yourself with death by tech stack, right? And then finally, for like an enhanced engagement strategy, look at the book of business, right? Are your customers segmented? And how, and what kind of engagement strategies are going to use? Like, is it high, mid, tech, digital touch, etc. And then what are the specific use cases around that? And then what kind of communication strategy are you going to use? This is a great time for cross-functional collaboration. Back to talking, building relationships with marketing and product to understand, like, what's the messaging we're using? Are we all saying the same thing? What is product, realistically going to deliver on the roadmap, so I know what I can get my customers excited about. But Asha, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, you kind of cover pretty much all of it, but I think one thing I would say is like, um as a human being, or like our psychology works in a way that, we want to be excited about something new. So I think that's and why I'm bringing this up, it's like when you're thinking about prepping for the year, whether it's from a CSM perspective or a leader perspective, you want to be thinking and figuring out, okay, what am I going to be looking forward to as I going into the new year? What's my team is going to be looking forward to? What my company is going to be looking forward to? And how can I collab? Like, how can I participate in that? Like, how can I collaborate in that? When you change your mindset to that, you get excited about something new. And whether it's like, identify challenges that you mentioned about learning about new product or industry or new skill set, that's going to be, helpful. I mean, that as a CSM, I would be totally all over AI right now and going to my leader and talking about, hey, I'm learning, I'm spending time to learn about these skill sets on the side, which could potentially be useful tomorrow when we advance our product or whatever that may be. And if there is any plans, I would love to participate and help out. Like, that's how you lead by example. That's how you, just, but again, like, it needs to also match to kind of align with your values and what you want to do or whatever. But that's something you have to kind of figure out what new is going to make me excited going into the new year. What am I going to be looking forward to? And I think when you shift that mindset, and I think that's what we all, I think, need to do. And when we're trying to prepare this, it's like, let's shift that mindset to, what am I going to be looking forward to? And I think that can really help looking at reflecting and then not kind of feeling and thinking about what didn't work and how am I going to make it work next time. But it's more about, okay, it didn't work, but let's change our iterate our strategy and whatever. And then this is what it can work in the future. So let's kind of move forward to that.
Agreed. Agreed. I love that you brought up the mindset too, because I think sometimes there's a sense of dread for year end and new year. Like, what kind of, like, goals are they going to put? Are they going to be hard? Like, is my book of business change? Like, all this dread. That proactivity helps you take control to say, here's what it is. Is this what I can expect? Is it, can I expect the same goals? Am I keeping my same book of business? Is anything changing? Are more products being launched? How's that going to affect my customer base? All the things, right? So I think that mindset of like taking charge and not having that sense of dread could be really, really helpful.
Yeah.
If I
Awesome.
can,
Yeah, Percy, please.
if I can offer just a personal story in this exact topic.
Yeah.
Pretty much last year at this exact time, we were looking, HPE was looking for a new overall CS leader, and I thought, quite frankly, I thought I was a shoo-in for the job. And I was passed over for the position because the person who was chosen had a really strong relationship with the senior VP. I didn't. I thought I had all the skills, but they passed me over. And so I sat back and I was like, okay, I can leave. And I definitely wanted to leave, but I'm like, okay, what do I want? What do I have to hang my hat on? Because there's quite frankly, a lot of people that say, I have X amount of years in CS and I'm a leader and whatever. And so I just investigated different niches within CS, and I'm like, obviously AI is something that a lot of people are interested. I was interested, and I'm like, okay, I didn't get the overall leadership position, but I am passionate about building my knowledge in AI and digital customer success. So I went to our senior VP and I said, hey, I would have loved that position. But if you would give me the chance to at least lead our digital customer success group, I would love that. And so they gave me that chance. And I've basically been able to focus my energy on building my skill set in digital CS without, quite frankly, the burden of, managing a large team. And my knowledge in digital CS is what got me the new job. If I probably had stayed and gotten the job for the overall lead, I probably wouldn't have had this, I think, a better outcome. So I think it's really important to get clear on, what you want to focus on. And also sometimes things that look like a disappointment end up working out better for you. So I just wanted to.
I love that.
Look at that. I love that. I love that. And I think another thing I would also kind of add to that is like there's so many times we put ourselves into a box thinking this is the path forward. Right. And I think, sometimes we do have to open up our box a little bit and look outside and kind of look at, okay, there might be actually other paths around that might be more interesting and might, put you in a better position, whatnot. And I think that's something I mean, I myself, like if you personally, if you remember, like when I introduced myself, I don't know if you remember, but I said former customer success leader turned marketer. I've led teams of customer success and then decided to go in a different route into a marketing zone. And I am exploring that right now. I still love customer success, but it's just there's opportunities that may knock your door that, and again, I'm not saying everybody needs to do this, but it's like, sometimes there's a value in learning something new and what that path is going to look like. And so we just have to be open with that box that I was talking about.
Yeah, I love that
So that's
person.
great.
I love that you really just like you did your pivot. You're like, okay,
Yeah.
like because I would have been pissed, I'm sure you were. And you were just like, okay, what wait a minute. I'm not gonna be a fool and just like act on emotion. How can I make this work for me? And I'm sure you were just like, I'm gonna be the digital pro and AI pro. And then I'm gonna, I'm sure you were like, well, I'm sure other companies are gonna appreciate that. And look where you led at NVIDIA. My God, that's like amazing. And I'm certain your former leadership was probably like, damn.
It was
So
surprised.
I bet they
It
were,
was
which is amazing, which in itself is the best. What is it? Revenge,
Yeah.
is like the best thing. Anyway, well, really quick before we throw you guys into breakout rooms, actually, we just want to really quickly, hold on, there we go. Share the breakout session questions, right? What are your top 3 priorities at year end, and how do you proactively plan to pursue them? And what is the one step you will take to better prepare for the start of the new year? And then also to Ashna, if you would go to the last page, we have resources too. Some of the books that we included. These are great books. The Customer Success Economy by Nick Mehta, Effortless Experience by Matt Dixon, 7 Pillars of Customer Success Classic, which all touch on planning. And then we found a couple of blogs that I think could be super interesting to you. I'm going to send everybody away into breakouts for about, oh gosh, probably 12 minutes. Then we gotta come back and really want to hear about how, like people's thoughts on those questions. And the questions, of course, are in the chat. So we'll see you soon. Oh, everybody's slowly starting to trickle back in. Hey, Debbie. Hey, Eric. Haven't seen you guys in a while.
Hello. Jane Young looks very brunette tonight.
I know. I didn't even bother changing her name. I forgot to change the name. I'm like, screw it, I'm Jan tonight. I'm incognito, Eric. Come on
Yeah.
now.
And Eric and I got to be in a group together.
Oh, nice. So good. Good. I hope you guys had a good discussion. Oh, and they're all coming in. The 60-second marker must be up. Hey, it's good to see everybody back in action. Tell, how did the conversations go? Any thoughts on the questions or any thoughts on this topic? Any best practices you want to share with the broader community? I'm here for all of it.
Not enough time. We got caught up in our introductions, and then we didn't have any.
Oh my goodness. See, I should have made the group small, but then I'm afraid people are going to get with the note taker and then they're going to be by themselves. So, but anyway, it's good you met new people. Anybody else, any thoughts to share about what you've done to successfully finish strong for the end of the year or start the new year?
And I don't know, Percy, if you want to expand, but Percy came up with a really good point in terms of, this is also the time to see how is CS being perceived. What you achieved in that year, how is it being communicated upwards, downwards? Because at times we all know we as CS have a lot to learn from our sales counterparts, which is what I was saying before we had to come, in terms of their mentality, how they sell themselves, how they ring the bell. So I know I've learned a lot from my sales counterparts just by shadowing them, going to their meetings, in terms of that perception, or putting words, or the value realization that CS does, and how that's effectively communicated to various stakeholders. And it is a good time to take stock of that and see, where do we need? Is it more? Is it less? How do we stand? Do we need to change our strategy? So I thought that was a good point. I don't know if you want to add more, Percy.
I think you have it right. I think I see kind of managing the perception, or others externally and internally perceiving that this team is performing at a high level or providing value. I see that as kind of like the soil, right? And If the soil is fertile, then you can come back and talk about all those practical things. Hey, here are the numbers. Look how I've met, achieve all these goals for the initiative and so on. But if the soil is not fertile, it's honestly, it falls on deaf ears, right? And so I think it's really important to understand, okay, are they perceiving value externally? Are they perceiving value internally? And then if I'm not sure, I need to be really on it to manage that. And then all of those other practical steps, I think you all covered with a lot of depth. It makes that much more effective. So
I love that. And I think you're right. Like if you are a team, a customer success team that's tied to revenue, you better know your numbers and you better have those spot on. And if you're not tied to revenue, you better figure out how to quantify your actions so that you can have something to show. Because from one of the frustrations I think we all face is from one company to the next, CS looks very, very different. And so there isn't like that, like where sales is like, if you're in a sales team, it's like, there's a number you got to hit. And if you don't hit it, there's all different kind of conversations. And when you do, there's lots of different kind of conversations. So great, great, great points. Kathy, you had a question.
I do. I was thinking that year-end is a good place to kind of take stock of your personal accomplishments. Well, your accomplishments at work that are yours alone. Maybe you've been working on learning something, and this is a time, if you succeeded, say, to go to your manager and say, I'd really like to take this on next year, and or I do this kind of project or learn this kind of a thing, and hoping you'll give me this responsibility. I've done well with what I've done this year. So that sort of thing. I don't know how exactly I'd bring it up, but
Well, I love that you brought that up because I think that's you're absolutely right. Like, it's a perfect opportunity to talk about stretch projects and stretch goals, right? And stretch responsibilities and maybe like cross pollination. Like, I want to team up with this other internal partner, because those are the sort of things that like maybe aren't as sexy. I'm going to go work with marketing on some targeted email campaign that I think is really important, a feature that isn't being adopted, but it's the stuff that really builds relationships, and it's that slow burn. It's about playing that long game. And I think if you bring it up and you don't force your manager, because your manager is managing a team, they're trying to extrapolate, well, what's this person's strengths and weaknesses? What do they want? What are they really trying to achieve? If you're bringing them ideas, it makes their job easier. Ashna, you're shaking your head. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think I was just shaking my head because I was kind of agreeing with everything that you said. It's like this is the time to. I mean, Kathy, you brought up a great point. This is the time to reflect on a lot of those things. And I think it's also kind of prepare you for. I think put it in a better light with your manager that you are investing in your own growth that can help you and the organization. And I think so you want to continue to do that next year. So maybe, hey, if you've been learning some skills and maybe next year you want to take it to a step further and be like, hey, I want to attend this event or whatever. And I'm just kind of thinking it out loud like this. You have to, like, you can't just go on there and just be like, okay, these are the 5 events that I want to go to. You have to show basically your work. And I think these are some of the things that you can work and start to kind of build on. And so that's why every time people say, it's like, make sure you're documenting what you're learning and getting out of it and how it's that kind of helping you, because at the end of the day, that's something that you can take on to your manager, to your leader, and also just overall in your career growth too, that you can add on your resume or whatever that may be tomorrow. Because you don't want to just think about it from right now perspective. You want to think about it from tomorrow's perspective too.
Oh, Ashna, I'm so glad you brought that up too, because I think like this is going to be controversial to some people, but I do think that I think it's a good idea. If there's changes you think that need to happen, or there's things that you think need to be implemented, taking charge and just doing that on the side, like, you know what I mean? I think, and then bringing maybe like a quasi fleshed out idea to your manager, not just an idea. We should do this. Who's we? If you go away and like do some legwork on certain things and present it, it's really good for you. Could be really good for your manager too, right? Because you've now helped them kind of maybe something along on a very long list that they were looking at. And I think that's a great way to kind of make yourself stand out, particularly at year end. No, love this conversation. Love the points. Ashna, any final thoughts before we wrap it up and let this wonderful community go back to their lives until next week?
No, I think we covered it all. I want to hear if anybody else has to, share anything. I know we're out of time, but if anyone else has anything to share or add, I'd love to hear that. Otherwise, it's just like, let's just plan away, I guess. That's what I want to say. This is the time to plan, putting things in place, and I'm sure we all are working on it already, but let's continue at it.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I think that's why, when we're talking about this topic and the timing for it, I just think it's so critical. It's, again, this is like one of the non-sexy aspects of work planning. Oh, yay. Who wants to do that? That's not something you jump out of bed and think of, but it does that kind of proactive approach. And even if you take it in little increments, I think it's going to pay off, in so many ways. So thank you all for coming here, as you always do. Thanks for contributing. Thanks for engaging. Thanks for being a part of this wonderful community. I would love to connect with you all, if we're not connected, and connect with each other. And we will see you at the next one. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great week. Cheers, then.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Success Hour, formerly known as CS Office Hours. We regularly put out new content, so to be the first to know, like this episode, tap that notification bell, hit that subscribe button, and we look forward to seeing you soon.